it's possible.
Yes!
And down. And
you're a beast, dude. Hello everybody and welcome. Today we're going to talk about the highly anticipated LMT 2.0. My name is Brian Nunez. I am the marketing brand director, and next to me is Chris Higa, the lead developer behind this awesome product. Now we have a lot to cover here, and we're definitely need to talk about that drive technology, being able to do a bicycle, all this great stuff. But before we get there, Chris, I really want to touch base on kind of the key outside differences that's easy to see, things that are not so easy to see.
Okay. I mean, one of the key things with the LMT 2.0 was we wanted to just enhance the overall look to try and get it to look even more like the real trucks. Instantly, one of the things you see is the powder-coated chassis. So you have the green, neon green powder-coated chassis for the Gravedigger and the blue for the Son of Diggers. And they just make the cars pop.
Opposed to the gray that they used to be.
Correct, yeah. And then the next thing visually you'll see dual shocks on every corner. And you don't see shock springs. You don't see shock springs on the real monster trucks. So we went through all the testing process to go, how do we make it happen? How do you make it look as real as possible? And the third big thing, the tire.
That's right. And the wheel.
And the wheel, yeah.
So just to kind of recap, the old wheel had a bigger inner diameter and a smaller outer diameter. Yes. And the scale wasn't necessarily there from that perspective. Originally, why we did that is to clear the knuckles and all the suspension points.
Correct.
Now, when we went to a more scale approach, that kind of forced us to go wider offset, to your point.
Yes.
But now we're wider, different tire, and now we have a longer wheelbase as well from the mud trucks, right?
Yes, a little bit longer wheelbase. So we're on the 15 inches versus 13 and a half.
So overall, it's a bigger vehicle.
Yeah, it definitely has a bigger footprint, and it does fit really good with the bodies. And the longer wheelbase does help us in a few aspects that we can talk about later.
Perfect, yeah, we're gonna get into that. But one key thing, which was a good segue from you, is the bodies. There's some minor tweaks to the graphics that the real Monster Jam fan will know, but the bodies, the mold of the bodies is identical, right? We didn't change the bodies
Correct.
at all.
The shape of the body is exactly the same, but the graphics on both vehicles have been updated to the most current graphics from Monster Jam.
Perfect. And then let's just touch back on these rings. These actual rings on these wheels are removable, which is great because then, to your point, you can swap colors, you can paint them, and just pop them back in, a little bit of CA to kind of make sure they stick on there. Yep. And it's just, again, brought up that scale appearance of the truck way up, right?
Correct. And like I said, the beadlock rings in the tire take the most abuse when we're doing these tricks. So if you want them to look nice, after you beat them up for a while, you can replace them.
Good point. Good point. So we covered the wheel, the tire, the chassis, which to me is huge. Talk to me a little bit about that wheelie bump in the back, and why did we go with that versus the older wheelie bar that we actually had?
Part of the drive technology allowed us to get rid of the wheelie bar.
Perfect.
So now that we don't actually need the wheelie bar, we can make a much more scale-looking design that looks more like the real truck. So now it's a curved bar. It does still function as a wheelie bar where it will not let the truck go end over end backwards. It will stop the truck, but it is a much more realistic looking design. And it actually does have a mount in there so you can make a flag mount. Perfect. So you take a little antenna tube, make your custom flag, and you can, there is a place to mount the flag in there.
Perfect. So for a little teaser for you ahead of this video, you're gonna be able to see where we talk about this drive technology where the truck balances its own wheelie. There's no need for a wheelie bar anymore, which is fantastic. It makes you feel like a real driver. It makes you feel like a kid again, honestly. Wheelies never get old. So outside of that, visually, we touch a little bit on the graphics, some subtle changes that they did in the real trucks that we did. Anything else from the cage perspective, the driver, that's different?
The biggest thing with the cage technology is now it has a twist lock clicker in the back.
So let's go ahead and do that.
Let's make sure these are off. We still have the side pins, but you don't actually have to run the side pins. but it is a little more secure. But when you now have a twist lock here on the back, and it keys itself in, and it allows you to just quickly, easy, push, a little bit of push down.
Perfect.
And it locks itself in place.
That's awesome. So with that being said, let's go ahead and remove the body, and we'll kind of go into the differences underneath, get a little bit closer shot of those shocks and those sway bar links. So Chris, go ahead and show them kind of the benefit of that twist lock and how you kind of don't need to find the position. It kind of just snaps into place, right?
Yeah, the twist lock here actually has it's like a cam lock position. So it's spring loaded. So when you twist it, it'll release the cam, but it holds the lock in place. So you don't have to try and line up the bow ties to get them to go in. So it holds its place, twist it in, and it locks in place.
Perfect. And then to remove the entire assembly, it was just 2 screws in the front?
Yep, literally 2 screws in the front of the cage here, and the whole body came off.
And then you just unplug the front headlights, because it does still have the front LEDs, right?
It does still have the LED headlights,
awesome.
Correct.
That's always an iconic thing. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at with the body off. And now I want to touch back on these shocks a little bit. One, because now you can truly appreciate the springs not being there and the reservoirs that we added, which is cool from a scale perspective. But talk to me about them from a performance perspective. What are the benefits of this from a tuning perspective and what we can do with it moving forward?
Yeah, so with these shocks, we actually, there's a lot of things you actually don't see inside these shocks. So there's actually 2 different shocks here. You have one that is an internal spring and one that is actually just for dampening. So they are both oil filled, but you have the inside shock, it's actually just slightly longer than the dampening shock. And it has a special piston that actually has 4 little guides on it to help keep the spring from rubbing against the inside of the body. And then to adjust preload, we actually have special preload spacers that will go inside the cap if you start adding weight and making modifications to your truck, it gets a little heavier. We have a 2mm and a 4mm spacer that you can use to adjust the ride height of the chassis. But then same thing, you have a standard 4-hole piston in the front. You can drill it, you can change oil weights to fine tune, because now with the 8 shocks, you actually have much more dampening. So you don't have to run quite as heavy oil, but you can, because you have twice the volume.
Got it.
So now you can fine tune it a little bit more, where you can go, oh, I need it to be a little bit softer to get that weight transfer and the look, but I still need it to have enough dampening so when you land big, it doesn't bounce super crazy.
That's something that I think the racers and the real freestylers out there are going to appreciate, is the fact that you now have more tuning capability with this shock package. So it looks better, but it performs better, and it opens up the window for better tuning.
And I believe we have 4 or 5 different spring rate options that are available for the internal shock springs.
Amazing, great. So now that we covered the shocks, talk to me about these sway bar link covers.
So the sway bar links, we actually went, we wanted to look a little more realistic. So we actually went to a torsional design where it twists on the bar. Functionally, it works exactly how it's supposed to, but it looks so much better.
Right.
For a racer, if you wanted to change it, the old bar can go in and you can use that to fine tune your vehicle. But these we will offer 2 or 3 different bars so you can adjust the torsional twist in it. But just, it looks so much more realistic because of the way the bar is shaped.
Perfect. Then I can already see the aftermarket guys making actual metal aluminum links on that, and
yeah,
just getting out of the way. I mean, even if you were to take the time to start painting these reservoirs, I mean, everything, just so much opportunity here. All right, so we talked about shocks, we talked about the torsion bars, and that the old sway bars still do function on this. I know there's some changes to the axle housings as well. I'm going to flip this over to kind of let you kind of point out where we changed. But I'll start off by saying, originally we thought the racers were going to want to pull the diffs out between runs and tune and tweak. So this whole third member was removable, right? But that also created some kind of weak points in the axle. So now you fix that, and how? Yeah,
so like you said, what we noticed is that the racers necessarily weren't actually going to be changing the diffs that often. So we actually went to a 2-piece design axle. So now the third member and the front half of the axle is all one piece. What that does is it strengthens that fracture point where we had basically a crease that created a fold, kind of a weak fold point. The other thing we also did was we widened the spacing on the lower 4-link mounts.
Got it.
This allowed us to get a little bit more material around the screw bosses to greatly improve the strength of the mounting positions themselves from the original axles. They are just substantially stronger than the original axles. And we also increased the size of the bearings to what we used in the TLR tuned bearing. So we went to a little bit bigger bearing just for more support of the pinion.
Around the pinion, gotcha, which is huge because these things have so much torque. You need the proper bearing to kind of keep the torque from grabbing that pinion and shifting. So that's a good call. So we talked about the axles. Anything in the corners that's different as far as hubs, spindles, carriers?
Front caster block, the spindle carrier, used to have an adjustable 0 and 5 degree setting. And it used a button head screw that forced you to use a 1.5 millimeter driver. That was a little bit of a point of contention for some people because if you didn't have a good, sharp 1.5 millimeter screw, it could be a little bit painful to work on those parts.
Got it.
So we updated the front caster block they are now set at 0 and 5 degrees, so there are 2, but you now went to the same cap head 2 millimeter screw that you would use in the rear. So now you can use a 2 millimeter driver. It's much more friendly, much easier to do, less problems with it, and just easier to work on.
Perfect, yeah, 1.5 millimeter. The only thing worse than that is a 1/16th, and the only thing worse than a 1/16th is an 050. So 2 millimeter, having just to have one driver in your tool is always helpful. All right, did we change anything from the links to the center?
Well, these are the longer links from the mud truck, so it's now for the 15-inch wheelbase, so you're about 3/4 of an inch longer front and rear, so that also updates the drive shaft lengths. But other than that, not really a whole lot of that. Like I said, the axle housings, the 4-link mounts, the spindle carrier.
How about driveline? Did we remove any metal from the yokes, from the axles?
No, the yokes are still full metal. Just for durability, we found those things to be relatively bulletproof. I mean, I don't think I ever hear of anybody saying that they have a problem with the axle that other than maybe there's a little too much thread lock on things.
Gotcha. Which you need when you're with these high horsepower.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's flip the truck back over now that we talked about kind of the bottom side. Any other changes? I mean, obviously the chassis looks great now being fully outer coated. Anything else electronic-wise that we should mention?
So it has a complete new electronics package.
Perfect.
So there's this has the LCG trays, so if you want to run a shorty pack in here, you can remove the block here and get your batteries set a little bit lower. So this was developed out for the mud trucks. But we have special programming into the ESC and the receiver here. So it's a new receiver with the drive technology, which we'll probably go over a little bit later. What it does is it works in conjunction with that to when we get into our target windows or target angles, it actually switches functionality within the ESC to do different things to give us a much more controllable trick.
Gotcha. So both go hand in hand in kind of the whole drive technology package and how awesome that is.
And I do like all the black.
Yeah,
much more subtle. It blends in. It looks nice and clean.
Awesome. Transmission-wise, we still have the Cush technology in there?
Transmission-wise, it's still the same. We actually are using the motor, the 2800 kV out of the mud trucks.
Okay.
So this truck actually is 4S capable.
But
we do recommend that you run it on 3S. It is really, really fast on 4S. All the tricks have been optimized to run on 3S.
Going back to the electronics, it is also 2S capable, right?
Yes.
Now, is there talk to me about like when would you run 2S? When would you run 3S, which is probably all the time? And is there any point where you would run 4S?
So 3S would be my preference to play with it. Okay. A lot of the clubs that are racing only allow you to run 2S. So if you were going to race this, we just wanted to make sure that someone that had a box stock vehicle, that it'll function and perform well out of the box for them. The times I would run it on 4S, I've actually taken these with me to Glamis and being in the sand dunes. Things that tend to make your cars need to be kind of power hungry, that's when you battery up.
Yep,
and
sounds good. But big disclaimer that 4S is something where you need to have the experience to manage it. It's not a matter of 2S, this thing's unbreakable, right? 4S, you're asking for trouble. You know, it's like jumping into a high performance car and you need to respect it.
Just because I have a driver's license doesn't mean I should drive a Porsche. Exactly. You know, just.
All right, Chris. So we talked about this chassis now being powder coated green versus the old gray anodizing that it was. Yeah. But these center plates are the same. The outside plates are different?
Yes, the outside plates are different. The outside plates actually have optimized holes for particularly the DualShock setup. You have once you can move them in and out, but you actually can't move them up and down. So we went through and gave kind of 2 positions to be in, but for the most part, I don't think anyone's going to move them. I mean, it works really good where it's at.
Perfect. All right, now let's get into the fun stuff. The last thing we're going to talk about is that servo saver, and how that is crucial for the drive technology.
With that being said, with the tricks that we wanted to do, the servo just needed to be stronger in general. So this is probably one of, that I know of, an RTR that's going to come with a metal top servo. You needed that simply for the strength of the output. I think everyone's going to be happy that it is now a 25 tooth spline. The big thing with the servo saver is we went to using what we call the Belleville disc washer or disc spring.
Okay.
What this allows us to do is get a much higher spring rate. Because what you would have with a conventional spring is as soon as it would collapse, the spring rate would really start to decrease dramatically through the travel of the servo saver. And what this allowed us to do was, one, we can fine tune the servo saver by using different Belleville washers. So you can mismatch the different thicknesses of the washer to fine tune and adjust the servo saver. So right now it comes with 6 of the soft and 6 of the firm Belleville washers in it. So it gives you a good mix of, it's soft enough that when you hit stuff, it actually still will break, but it's stiff enough that it will maintain to do all of our tricks. If you wanted it to be a little stiffer, you can take out some of those washers, put more of the firm washers in.
Got it. So to kind of summarize in layman's terms, one of the huge features of this is that you're actually able to use drive technology to balance it in a bicycle, right? And if you come up against something, there's so much leverage here that that makes the technology harder to do its job, but also puts the servo under extreme conditions and extreme stress.
Correct.
So that servo on there is not a stock servo. Yeah. It is definitely a better upgraded servo. The servo saver and that technology works together with the drive technology.
Correct.
So it's one of those things that we kind of want to make clear that in order to get the awesome endo balancing, the bicycles and the wheelies, we had to, it's not just simple as just putting a new receiver in. You need the ESC, you need the servo, you need the servo saver. Everything has to work together as a package, and that's your job.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to make it all work together.
Yeah, I mean, I worked a year and a half with our Spektrum engineering team, developing things up. Those guys did an awesome job. Probably listening to me cry too much about why this is good, this doesn't work, this is awesome. And like, I mean, some of it is, there's a lot of trial and error in this because, you know.
We don't know what we don't know. We have to learn.
Yeah, and I've heard people even say, oh, well, there's toys that do this. I said, yes, but the toys don't turn. The wheels are fixed. If the wheels were fixed in one position, then it's a little easier to do. But when you have everything dynamic that's moving, you have suspension that moves up and down, front wheels that turn, then you have different forces going in different directions. It becomes a massive math problem that sometimes just makes you want to bang your head against the wall.
Yeah.
Because you're going, okay, how do we solve this?
Right. So big shout out to the Spektrum team. This whole drive technology, the MS6X technology on the Pro Moto, so much technology that's really pushing Losi above and beyond the competition. It comes from Spektrum, so shout out to that team. Well, I think that covers a lot of the changes from our LMT originally came out in 2020, if I remember correctly, to this bad boy 5 years later, which is a huge improvement in my opinion. Now for the fun stuff. Let's head outside and let's go talk about drive technology, how to use it, because it's something where even Ryan Anderson and all those guys got a chance at it and they were all blown away. It takes your RC experience to another level. It's not meant to be easy, push a button and it goes on its side. It's meant to be fun and challenging, just like a real monster truck would be. Didn't he say it took him 5 years to understand?
Yeah, right. I told Ryan, I don't know why he thought two-wheel skills were so hard, because I showed him what I could do, and he told me it literally took him 5 years to figure out how to consistently do a bicycle where he said he could use it in the stadium or in a freestyle run. And he said, and even then, he's like, it's not a guarantee. You know, he's like, it is still super hard and super challenging. I mean, Bari Musauer, same thing. Camden Murphy, when they were here, they got to see the track and they were just like, wow.
Good. I think what you said there is key. It's not a guarantee, right? Doing a perfect bicycle, the perfect endo, it's not a guarantee with this vehicle, just like it's not a guarantee in the real truck. But if you hone in your skills, if you really focus on it, you can get to a point like you. Higa can just go out there and make this thing perform like nobody else can. But he also has a 2-year advantage on you guys, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, don't feel bad if it takes you a little while to figure out, because there is a learning curve to it. It does have some driver input that needs to be put in, and that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it challenging. That's when you sit there and you can impress your friends and go. You can totally mess with them too.
Yeah, exactly. Turn it off.
You can turn the freestyle mode off when you give them the control, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're the best driver ever."
Great. So let's go outside. Let's talk about those modes, the technology, because that's what I'm really excited for. All right, so we made our way outside to showcase how awesome this new drive technology is. Now, Chris, let's go ahead and get this started just in unlimited mode. Let's show them kind of how buck wild this thing can get with no type of restrictions.
Okay, yeah, the unlimited mode has no driver aid at all. So this is basically 3S full throttle. So we can sit there. If I just grab full throttle,
Boom.
boom, wheelie right over.
Perfect. Here's one of the benefits too of having too much power. You can just kind of rock this thing back and forth. Bingo. So in limited mode, you have full control.
Full control, or out of control,
or whichever way,
depending on which way you want to look at it.
Now let's show them wheelie mode, which is just a simple click of a button,
so,
right?
Yeah, one click down from all of it, which is mode 2.
Now, so let's show them how easy it is to do a wheelie.
So now in wheelie control here, I can.
You're not doing anything besides holding full throttle, right?
Nope.
All right, so we talked about unlimited mode, right? Where you have full control, it's a monster there. Now you have wheelie, which is to me my funnest. Now you also have freestyle mode. Now the whole benefit of freestyle mode are those bicycles, right? So how do you get into that mode and how do you do a bicycle?
Yeah, so the easiest way is in your AB rocker switch, you click all the way down till you hear one beat. Okay. That puts it into the freestyle mode. The freestyle mode has multiple target angles in it, which allow you to do wheelies and stoppies, but it also allows you to do your bicycle.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and click that bad boy into freestyle mode. And how would you go about, if you were new, how would you start working and learning on how to do the bicycle?
So the best way to learn and how to do a bicycle is you basically are going to give it full steering one direction, and you're going to slowly increase the throttle until you start to see those inside wheels pick up.
Just like that. That's that finesse. That's what you have to learn, right? That's what's cool.
It's not automatic, and it does take a little bit of kind of getting used to the feel and
the grip.
Yeah, it is these tricks are very grip sensitive. So the higher the grip, the easier it is to do these tricks. If you're going to try to do them on dirt or something, you may need some type of a driver aid.
You need that jump to kind of get you there.
Or some, just like you'd see in the real monster truck. You need something to help get it up on the 2 wheels.
Perfect. So let's see if we can get it back on 2 wheels. So now that you're in this bicycle mode, you're just giving it steering input, right? In order to kind of adjust the angle, or are you adjusting the steering at that point?
I'm adjusting some of the steering, but you're also modulating the throttle a little bit. So the slower you go, the more angle you can get it. So that actually gets you to be able to turn to what we would call roof side. So depending on what side of the vehicle you're on, it actually will allow you to turn to the roof side. And to do that, you need to get the truck to be almost vertical. So you have to slow down. If you go to the chassis side, which is the underside of the chassis, it's a little bit more stable and you can go a little bit faster.
Gotcha. That's amazing.
So once you get it up on the bicycle like this, if I want to turn to the roof side, I got to slow down. And you can see how much slower I'm going. But when I go to the chassis side, you can see the difference in speed.
Gotcha.
But once you figure this out, you can drive around on two wheels for quite some time.
This is a beauty. When you figure this out, that's when you feel like a complete professional. This is what made Ryan Anderson go, dude, you gotta be kidding me. So right now you're going roof side, right?
I'm going roof side. So right now I'm turning full right wheel because I'm on the right side of the truck. But you can see how much slower I'm going and then to get out of this, I can sit there and let go of the wheel, and the natural orientation is it wants to go to the chassis side just because it's more stable that way.
Awesome. All right, let's set that puppy down. All right, so now that you gave us an awesome explanation on how easy wheelie mode is, some of the techniques for bicycle mode, can we go through those knobs? Now let's say in wheelie mode, what do those knobs do and how can you adjust them?
So in wheelie mode, the only one that you actually use is the one that says target angle.
Okay.
So what the target angle does is it sets how much angle the actual wheelie is. So if you turn it counterclockwise, it reduces the angle. Turn it clockwise, it makes the angle higher.
Perfect. Let's crank that all the way down and try to pop the wheelie.
All right, so there we go. This is turned all the way down.
All right, now let's turn it all the way up and see the difference.
So when you turn it back all the way,
so now that front end is pointing to the sky way more.
You can now see it dragging the wheelie bar.
Gotcha.
Where before, it wouldn't drag the wheelie bar.
Perfect.
Or I should say, wheelie bump.
Yeah, there you go. Now, talk to me about the bicycle mode. What knobs do you adjust and when for bicycle mode?
Yeah, so in the bicycle mode, you actually have two knobs that you have. The target angle, and it's the same thing. The target angle works the same way, but it's just now on an angle.
Gotcha, on its side.
On its side. And then you have one that we call roll trim. Roll trim works almost like your steering trim would, except for it adjusts kind of the size of the arc that you're going. So the natural arc is it wants to turn to the chassis side. Mm-hmm. If you want it to go a little straighter, you start opening up that roll trim, turning it clockwise, and it will actually straighten that arc out.
Gotcha.
The truck will tend to go
so in theory, if you get in bicycle and you have no steering input and it's wanting to go naturally, it's going to go to one side. Yeah. You can use your roll trim and literally getting to go straight as an arrow.
You can
in bicycle.
Correct.
Perfect. Now, what do you recommend for starting around? Where do you want these knobs to be?
So most of the time, in the target angle, when we're starting, we're trying to brake in the tires. We actually want you to turn the target angle all the way down. You don't want it to get up so high. You just want it to try and catch it as soon as possible because you're trying to knock that edge off the tire. Most of the time, you're going to run the knob for the target angle in the range somewhere between 10 and 2 o'clock if you looked at it as a dial.
10 and 2, so kind of around, let's call it your 30% and your 60%.
Correct.
Gotcha. Yep. What about your roll? That's really adjusting for what you want it to do.
Correct. The roll trim, yeah, like you said, it's going to adjust to kind of your driving style and what you want to. My preference is that I like it to go to the chassis side. It makes it a little bit more stable and it's a little easier to maintain the trip. So I always have it so it's always a slight arcing to the chassis side.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we talked about wheelie mode, we talked about bicycle mode, but we can also get this thing to balance on its nose, right? So talk to me about what's the best mode for that and how do you actually make that trick happen?
Yeah, the easiest way, if you just want it to drive on the nose, you can actually be in the wheelie mode or the freestyle mode and just hit full reverse. And it will back up and ride on the nose just like a wheelie, just going backwards.
Let's try that. That sounds like a fun time.
So this is in the wheelie mode, and we just will hit full reverse.
So it's essentially doing a reverse wheelie.
Yeah.
Got it.
The biggest difference between the wheelie mode and the freestyle mode is the wheelie mode actually has brakes.
Gotcha.
So the freestyle mode actually gets you kind of the instant forward reverse, which is why you can do some of the tricks a little bit easier.
Now, if you're really pro like you are, you can really just tap the brakes, get it on the nose, right?
Yes, and my preference on how to do this is, it's taken me a little while to figure this out. I actually start in the wheelie mode, in mode 2.
Okay.
And when you want to get the weight to transfer, when you get it up on the nose, as soon as it almost stops, I will click it into mode 1 so I can sit there to try and get it to balance and move on.
That's the beauty of it. It's on the fly, so you can go between modes.
This is what makes this trick, I think, harder than the bicycle. This is where you sit there and go, this is what makes it challenging, and you will spend, you could spend a good part of a day just going, I am going to figure out how to do this trick because I've seen someone do it. I know it's possible. Yes.
And down. You're a beast, dude. But when you do it, it just makes you feel like a hero. You look like a hero. That is epic.
And what's those things we all say? Hey, one time's luck, second time's skill. So you got to be able to back it up, right? That's where this practice and this technology, because it's not automatic, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I know it's possible. I'm going to figure this out.
That's awesome. This is what makes me happy is the Losi brand is all about putting yourself in the driver's seat, and there's no better way than doing that than trying to figure out this technology. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, with that, guys, we appreciate all the time that you've spent with us and learning about the new LMT 2.0 with the drive technology, with the 8 shocks, with the new wheel, the tire, and all the awesome stuff that Chris and the team have been working on. This is only the beginning. If you can imagine, now that we have the technology, where else can we put this in? What other bodies could we do? So make sure you drop a comment. Let us know what you think. Where should we take the LMT 2.0? Where should we take the 3.0? We really love you guys and all your input. Make sure to drop a comment below. Chris, thank you so much for your time. Great job. We'll see you guys in the next one. We're going to keep on having fun.